something very new, right? I mean, imagine we had the software which kind of, for example, you are on a WhatsApp application, right? And you're saying, I want to go for a pizza. And you just imagine, just out of nowhere, your phone is coming out with an advertisement on pizza, right? I mean, WhatsApp, I have not tied up with me, not done any partnership with me, but your phone could understand and just throw you maybe a deal on pizza, right? And people is excited, wow, I mean, is this a magic? Actually, one of the guys actually told, is this a magic what you're doing? Right? How did phone learn that I was talking on WhatsApp about pizza? So that overall concept was so strong that people wanted to give more feedbacks to us and what else we should do initially before jumping on what we're doing. So we actually came back, started modifying the requirements and did that. I think.
So interesting you say that because 90% of the startups that we talk to and people who have been on the My Story, they always say that if you are the startup guy, you are the one who has to sell your product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's your own spirit which has to go there and talk. Nobody else can take up that role initially, unless you really have a co-founder which you're working with for the last 3-4 years. Who's on the same frequency as what you are in.
Sure.
So together as co-founders or maybe as founder, if you're alone, you have to go and talk what's going in your mind. And you cannot send somebody else. You cannot sit in your chair and say, you go and talk on my behalf. You have to move out and do that. So that helps. Because you are the one who knows what needs to be done next.
And it's your story.
It's your story,
absolutely. Yeah. So although you're doing something very new, innovative, as you said, somebody says this is magic.
Yes.
But at the back of your mind, this is that year and those years that you're probably thinking of those reference customers, where you're thinking of Google or an InMobi or Pune's own PubMatic, which were kind of entering into that field and the whole internet synergy and environment was also kind of moving towards that?
Yes. I think the whole internet was moving towards that space, and I always followed Yahoo, Google, and similar companies in that space because we knew this contextual learning, recommendation, searching, and so on. So we had termed this phrase as auto search, right? I mean, we were in this world of manual search. To understand it better for any consumer, it's better to call it as an auto search as compared to artificial intelligence. So people can at least think auto search matlab there could be some automatic way wherein some other guy or some other device is doing job for me. And we were actually following up all these internet companies from business model standpoint, from technology standpoint, where we are heading.
And that must have given you a lot of confidence that probably you're in the right path, the right peak.
Yeah. I think from a business model standpoint, yes. That we are not doing something very different. So business model is right, it's matter of how your technology can roll out quickly and you get into that business model to start making money. But our business model of how do I want to make money on my product was right. There was nothing, something which we're doing something very different.
So absolutely, like investors say, and probably you are kind of validating that it's better to have a competitor than no competitor at all. That means that there's a market for something.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I even got questions like, why wouldn't Google do this, right? I mean, so in a way they just want to evaluate you, right? I mean, they just want to make sure that, are you aware there is a competition? And what do you think if your competition does it? And most of the people find these questions funny when investors ask them, but from an investment standpoint, that's a very, very valid question. And I'm putting $1 million into you and somebody just comes in and do this, so my $1 million is gone and my $1 million has just not come from anywhere. I have worked hard to earn that money in whatever ways, right? So you have to be pretty much specific. Okay, so I mean, you don't have an answer, right? Actually speaking, what does Google decide? Yeah, I mean, yes, Google can do this, but maybe if you have IPs, then we may get acquired. Does that make sense, right? Or maybe even Google wouldn't do this, because even if Google wants to do this, they would have done every single thing in the world and they could not have been Apple or Nokia or I don't know, Microsoft or whatever companies we have around today. And I think that struck them. Okay, giving them that opportunity that there's some exit to me in some way really helped to my angel investors.
Okay, and so now you're in the products and services business both, correct? So for the benefit of the audience, could you just in very simple terms explain to us the target segment, the kind of value add that you're doing for your customers, because you're targeting the B2C customer, targeting the B2B customer.
Correct. So our product was a purely a B2C product per se. I mean, it was like, consumers use it for free, but I make it money from somebody else, right? Which could be advertisers or maybe app providers or maybe content players. You're actually trying to do two startups at the same point of time, in a way, right? You're trying to sell to consumers who are very flaky in nature. Out of 10 consumers, 7 consumers don't like, you're out of the business, right? So there had to be balance between what you're doing at the both sides. So we made sure that even from a consumer standpoint, we did lots of feedbacks with consumers. We understood what they want, what they don't want, how do they want to look this, and blah blah blah. So that was one way of selling to end consumers per se. And then there was a B2B side where you have to make money. So you have to, and that's a different side altogether. Advertisers and similar companies who have different thoughts altogether. So you're kind of playing a two sales role in the one ecosystem itself, and both are very different in nature altogether. And it's kind of a vicious circle. You don't have consumers, you don't have B2B customers. You don't have B2B, then you don't have money, so you cannot scale up to your end consumer. So that balance was very important, and we strategically decided that let's build up the consumer portfolio. But at the same point of time, let's start getting traction from the B2B customers as well. So when I say B2B, all these advertisers to understand what they think about this, whether they will be happy to put money on this, because if they are not putting money, again, even if you have 100 million users, does not make sense, right? Unless somebody wants to acquire it. So we did that parallelly once. We were just about to launch, and we did some pilots with some customers. We started talking to advertisers in a different way altogether. So just like moving this ad and putting it and going now over here in this direction. I think that balance was important at that point of time.
Okay. And so about 3-4 years into your startup now, and life comes full circle with you. Meet another Anand. Now Anand Deshpande of Persistent.
Right.
So tell us how that happened, and now finally Hoops got acquired by Persistent.
Yes, so we were looking for a Series A funds. We were talking to many investors, and at that just juncture, I think Persistent had launched their own Persistent Venture Capitalist Fund, which was headed by Sri, based out of US, and Sridhar Jagannathan, and who was also Chief Innovation Officer of Persistent. And there is another guy, Subramanian Kaveri, who was Vice President Innovation Labs in Persistent. So I just met them from an investment perspective, and I remember Sri had come to US, and he was so tired. I gave him a call in 8:30. Are you free now? Can I come down? He was like, yeah, I just came down, and tomorrow I'm flying to Chennai. So I thought, no, when is he gonna come? So I told him, don't think, you can sleep when I'm coming there. So don't worry about that. I'll make sure I'll keep you awake. And so I met him in his hotel where he was staying. He was actually half sleepy while I was describing what I'm talking about.
I think you got the right moment.
Yeah, but maybe rightfully yes. So he actually guessed out what we're doing, and he was again, because he was a Chief Innovation Officer, he could understand the value of the innovation. And since he worked with lots of startups in US, he came from US anyway, right? He was working out of US. He just understood what potential this product has in a longer term. Maybe from an exit opportunity, maybe from a business opportunity, or so on.
Sure.
He understood that his other colleague, Subramanian Kaveri, he liked it very much because he was heading innovation labs. So he was doing lots of stuff on innovation. So he understood it very well. And then I think we met together first. He went to Chennai, but he said that when I'm coming back, I'm for sure getting in front of Anand.
Okay.
So I was invited the very next week to meet Anand, and I think Anand, when he saw it, just liked it. He just liked it, and that actually worked out very well for us. And then we were discussing funding options, acquisition options, and so on. And I was like, I wanted to get off this day-to-day operations. To be honest, it was 2.5-3 years. We got initial tractions. Just about growing it further. And I just thought that maybe it's time to give an exit to angel investors and maybe work with Persistent and scale up from there and do maybe lots more things which you may not be able to do.
So instead of an offer for funding, you actually got an offer for acquisition.
For acquisition, yeah. I think that's how. And Anand, as we all know, very humble, very down-to-earth person, very simplified person, and I would say.